We've been talking about Rampage and stuff, talking about Moose, when we should be talking about what's happening this week's Rampage.
Right.
It's the second episode, and it's called The First Dance. It's taking place at the United Center in Chicago.
The First Dance?
Yes, and the whole speculation, everything for the last couple of weeks, well, more than that even, has been the speculation as to whether or not Chick Magnet Punk, CM Punk himself, will be there.
What?
Yeah.
CM Punk's gonna maybe debut?
I know, it's shocking.
Holy cow.
It's blowing the world away. But, and Lord knows, AEW's been teasing this thing for weeks. It's going to be in Chicago. They've been dropping CM Punk references like they're candy, not just in promos, but also in the shirts that Kenny Omega's been wearing the last couple of weeks.
But they have on between Reigns and Cena, too. You know? I mean, there's been the couple, with the blow you a kiss and stuff like that.
John blew the kiss and everything.
This guy's getting lots and lots of coverage right now, all the way on through all the feds at this point.
So I think what I want to do now, Jay, is just like, it's something that I am not comfortable with doing or used to doing. But at this point, let's just open the floodgates. Rampant speculation. Let's talk about it, Jay. Let's see. Do you think CM Punk is going to appear on AEW tomorrow night from this recording, so Friday night on Rampage?
I will say, if he doesn't, it's the world's biggest rib on the professional world professional wrestling.
Let me ask you again. Do you think he's going to show up? Yes or no?
Yes, because they've booked all these Chicago shows. My speculation would be because it's going to be CM Punk, but if it's not, then I would almost feel like maybe the other 3 or 4 shows that are booked, like people would be like, "What the fuck?" and just not show up or something.
Right. Well, I mean, I think we can talk about. Let's talk about what happens if he doesn't show up in a minute. But let's assume again that he does show up, because I think this is the chapter where we can talk about what happens if he does show up. How would you envision him debuting? Who would you think his first opponent would be? Like, how would that all go down in your mind? Like, if you were to book CM Punk's return, like, what would you do?
In AEW, I would have to say CM Punk. Well, oh my, obviously Darby Allin comes to mind, but I don't really think that's the. I don't think. I would think someone like an MJF or something. It'd be great to see him.
Right. I mean, I agree with you. I think MJF would be my pick, where it's like you've got, MJF in the United Center talking about how he beat Chris Jericho. He beat the best in the world. And then you hear... Yep.
And a GTS at least.
Yeah, something like that. That would blow the roof off that place. As Pat Patterson would say, the people would go banana. And
What's his record now? Do you know?
Who?
MJF?
Well, God, I think he's had a couple of losses to his credit, but not singles losses.
That's what I'm saying.
And that's the thing. So if we were to say CM Punk versus MJF as the first match for Punk, like, it's one of those things where it's kind of a no-win situation because Punk would have to win that, right? But at the same time, like, do you sacrifice MJF's undefeated streak for CM Punk, who I know people will be like, oh, he's just older guys. Like, you got to give that rub to somebody younger.
No, that's how you debut a star like that, because he's got that money power right now. MJF will still eventually have that power even in the future because he's young, man.
That's a good point.
So you build at
It's a very good point. I think, like, unbeaten streaks, like, I think everyone has this idea where it's like the person who breaks the streak has to be somebody who could immediately, like, benefit from it. But it doesn't always have to be. It could just be somebody who, like, it makes an impact and it makes a big deal.
Right, like Ludwig Borga beating Tatanka.
Exactly.
So I guess if I were to envision, like, my my card for a really cool AEW event, I would think that a match like CM Punk and MJF, and then a match like Kenny Omega and Daniel Bryan would be like that would top it. I mean, if that happened, believe me, I'd be over here watching AEW right here with you.
Yeah, well, it's like that could be something to happen for a future card. And the Daniel Bryan speculation, that's honestly, I feel that's kind of like run under the radar since everything right now is focused on CM Punk. But we can talk about Daniel Bryan later. But I mean,
I hope they don't debut him against each other. Let's just say that.
Yeah, that seems like a big waste. So I wouldn't do that either. But you know what? I think we should talk about the prospect of what happens if he doesn't show up at any of these Chicago shows, and what if all this speculation is for nothing, and like, what if it is just a big rib, and what if all these references they've been dropping have just been to keep dangling the carrot, and then they take it away? Like, what would that do for the goodwill that AEW has in the eyes of many fans?
Well, I mean, that also, I mean, I have another question on top of that, too. I mean, what if, they've dropped references on him on WWE. What if he came back to WWE? I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but he could come back at SummerSlam, take both guys out. And
I just do not see that happening. CM Punk, after what he said in that interview with Colt Cabana years ago, I find it hard to believe he would ever go back to the same two people in charge that he had to, walk away from.
Well, apparently, but Triple H has lost power backstage. Apparently,
But who's still in power?
Well, true. That is true. But then again, did we ever think we'd see Colt Cabana and CM Punk in the same locker room?
Well, that's going to be awkward as hell. I mean, CM Punk and Colt Cabana, how that relationship totally dissolved after that podcast and the lawsuit that came from it.
Well, have we seen Colt Cabana actually in the last couple weeks?
Yeah, he's been on TV.
Okay, I'm just making sure. I'm like, maybe they secretly released
it. No, he's totally on TV, part of the Dark Order and everything. I don't think he's wrestled on Dynamite in particular in a while, but he's wrestled on Dark and Dark Elevation. But no, I mean, that might be a bit awkward. Punk and Cabana back in a locker room again after everything that went down between them. I mean, maybe they've patched things up. I don't know. But it just seems on the offset, that seems to be, it could be an interesting element to that. But I mean, I do think about that possibility of Punk not showing up and not being part of it, because maybe this is all just a big rib. But if that happens, I just can't imagine AEW would do that, because they know after everything they've done, if it backfires, it would blow up in their faces.
I think if they get Daniel Bryan, it's still a win. So in my opinion, at least if they produce one of the two, they will scathe, the fans hating them forever. But if they don't have either one of those guys, the only other person I can even see that would remotely be close to this would be a Brock Lesnar.
Sure, but I think okay, here's the thing: if Punk does not show up in Chicago, then someone else does need to show up. It would have to be someone as good, if not better.
Well, maybe it is Daniel Bryan.
Maybe it is Daniel Bryan. That'd be a weird swerve where it's you hear best in the world, and then you hear Flight of the Valkyries, and this is Bryan Danielson. What the fuck? Okay, that's not who we expected, but yay, still.
Yeah, right. Maybe we could have. What if we have an NWO show up? Brock Lesnar's the Hogan, and then you've got Daniel Bryan and CM Punk as the Hall and Nash.
They're trying to take over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, who are those guys from the other companies? Yeah, we know who they are.
They're called the Stans. My God, the Stans are in full force. Stan WO.
The Stan WO. Oh,
WWE's man. Better and you know it. We're going to prove it.
It's the new Radicals.
Oh, God.
Anyways. But no, I know that's
but
not going to
happen. I'm very excited. I mean, I don't know if I'll have time to watch Rampage live tomorrow, but I am very excited about the prospect of CM Punk showing up. And it just seems to write itself, and it just is one of those times where, okay, for real this time, this feels like a good opportunity to bring him back. I don't want to get too wrapped up in the fantasy booking, though, because I don't want to be that let down, I would really hope they would not disappoint the fans like that, because so many of them are hoping this happens. And if it doesn't, I think it's just going to really mess up their goodwill.
Want to hear more? Subscribe to This Week in Regret on YouTube for full episodes of the podcast, dropping every Thursday night. Don't forget, we're also on SoundCloud.